West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand why this is an issue.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, June 20th, 2025. John's still on the line from Thornton. John, thanks for sticking through the commercial break. Remind me where you guys were on this one. John pointing out that there has to be a social aspect to this because it was rooted entirely, transgenderism was rooted entirely in biology. You'd have consistent numbers across the board. But those numbers are actually going up as people talk about transgenderism.
Yeah, and John instantly said that it was alarming as far as the rise, which is interesting. So continue.
Yeah, well, kind of going back to this issue, I think the key point that's connected to is it genetic or is it social is what do we do to help these people? Because we don't want to ostracize people, and I don't think that's the point of any of this.
You don't?
We certainly don't want to do that.
You don't? Well,
no,
hang on.
absolutely
Explore that.
not.
Well, hang on a sec.
Absolutely not.
No, I would like to explore that just with you for a second, John. I believe there is part of this movement that is to ostracize the trans people. We have people that will call the show and text message us and talk about, I'm not going to participate in their mental delusion. I refuse to call them by any chosen name. And this is talking about adults, not kids. It's outside of the idea of surgery. Individuals saying they shouldn't be allowed to exist or even be trans. So I do think that there is an element, while small, I do believe there is an element of ostracization that does exist inside the anti-trans community.
Sure, but I'm not going to argue for a straw man. That's a bad argument. So I wouldn't try and defend that.
It's decent. No, it's
but, I mean,
absolutely applicable.
But Bill, do you think that law in Tennessee was meant to ostracize people or to protect kids?
A little of both. Yeah, I think it's done there a little of both. Yes, I think that's part of the motivation. Part of the motivation is that you're wrong. Well, and so there's an
ostracization. Is that ostracization to say that somebody's wrong?
In this case, possibly, yeah. I do believe that you're not allowed to be a full participant in the society unless you conform to X, Y, or Z, and that's fine. But I do believe that's part of it. Sure.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to defend anyone else's position other than mine,
that's fair.
So I'm not going to speak for that. Yeah, so... But what I'm trying to say is I think it connects to, well, how do you help these people? So if it's a genetic, issue, if it's a biological issue, well, then we would say, okay, well, we can only do biological things to help these people, right?
Possibly, but, the idea, though, when you have some genetic or biological issues, there is some other counseling that can be involved as well, because some of those things could impact you mentally. So, yeah, but it'd be a little bit of both, sure.
Okay, but as I understood it, your argument was 90% of this, or the majority, whatever percentage you want to put toward it, this is biological.
Well, it's more amorphous than that I believe there is a biological element simply because, and this is where I bring it to the table, and this is why, is because when we talk about sex, and this is the argument that I hear all the time against the fact about transgender and why we shouldn't have transgender people, etc., is the idea that sex is biological, that it is binary. You either have XX or XY, and that is not true. It is larger than that, but we seem to discount some of those subsets and the influences that those subsets do have on an individual's biology and their sexual identity and their gender identity. And that's where I feel the discount. And I believe that there are influencers found in those subsets that we are ignoring. And we should be looking at why and how that exists, because I can't point to a biological marker that shows someone's going to be gay. But I do believe, and I believe it's been shown by science, that it is a biological choice. And so that's where we're going with this, is while I can't point to these absolute chromosomes determine it, I do believe there is a biological factor involved.
So what percentage of people have these biological abnormalities that are causing them to be trans?
Unsure, because again, as I outlined, I don't necessarily know what those biological abnormalities as a total can be or are. Just like we didn't know some of these subsets in the biology and the chromosomes until recently as well. So that still remains to be seen, and I am open to the idea that I could be wrong. But I see indications in previously that there are indications for biology behind parts of this. I don't believe it is 110% biology, but I think that there are indications that biology can and probably does play a part in this. But I'm open to the fact that I'm wrong.
That is, though, a rejection of the trans worldview as it's espoused in this New York Times article that argues your identity is fully independent of your biology.
Oh, I understand, but I do have disagreements with them, too.
And here's the issue. You're pointing to genetic abnormalities. You're saying we have to consider these as causal factors. Well, 99% of the population or more does not have those genetic abnormalities. So it's an extraordinarily small subset. And that subset, by the way, does not, like 100% of the time, identify as trans. So your argument is that there's genetic factors, there's biological factors. You can't name what those are. You're just saying that they exist. And the ones that do exist aren't even necessarily good explainers.
I disagree, because I did talk about the idea of what those different variations inside the chromosomes are, and examples of biology where someone has the XY and then develops as a female. And you are aware of instances in which that actually changes inside of puberty based on how the chromosomes react once you get to puberty. So there are instances of it. You're also describing two different things. XY is genotype, and you're describing phenotype, which is the external biological presentation. A person who is XY chromosomes could phenotypically develop differently. That's true, but biologically, they are still a male. Yeah, I know, and that's
John,
exactly what I'm saying, John.
Bill,
I appreciate
thank
and
you.
that's why I can't get into genotypes and phenotypes, because it gets to a layer of minutia inside the discussion that isn't conducive to what we're doing on the air. It's a difficult lift. It's just like, John, when they have the New York Times article, they talk about the idea of when the trans community started talking about the choice inside of gender and the idea of how they were going to identify who was biologically born male and biologically born female, and the language around that, the language they chose, people didn't understand. The average lay person had a hard time understanding where they were going with it, and it became a barrier to the conversation and the understanding. So that's why I do it. That's why I don't go that deep, John, but I appreciate it.
All right, John, really appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Thanks for sticking through. Again, you're not seeing this anywhere else on any other talk radio show. Let's now talk Dan Caplis Law, and then we'll get to the news. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. He's right there with us guys when it comes to our values. That matters, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. Dan Caplis, 40 years of service to the people of Colorado, getting justice if you've been hurt in a serious motor vehicle crash. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS Law.com. Now is news with the National Salem people, because Blake's out.
Yeah.
A heat advisory is in effect through Saturday. It is going to be a hot one, 90s to near 100 degrees in Denver today, middle to upper 90s on Saturday, low to mid 90s Sunday. Nights will be in the 60s. It's also going to be breezy, brisk, and sometimes gusty southwest winds. Noticeably cooler, though, by Monday. Highs by Monday only 70s, with thunderstorms returning Sunday night and Monday. Weather, sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Is a program at the University of Colorado a federal civil rights violation? The University of Colorado at Boulder, this is from the College Fix, graduate program advertised for black women is facing a federal civil rights complaint. The Boulder Black Blossoms program at the university's Office of Graduate Access and Retention aims to support the lived and individual experiences and achievements of black women. Participants in Boulder Black Blossoms receive a $1,000 stipend. The program is currently accepting applications for the upcoming academic year. University administrators established the program last fall. The description notes anyone can participate in the program regardless of race or sex, but longtime civil rights activist Mark Perry says the claim rings false when compared to other descriptions and content on the program's website. Perry, a senior fellow at Do No Harm, as well as the Equal Protection Project, filed the complaint with the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights in Denver after the College Fix asked for comment on the program. This is clearly a racially segregated program for black female students and also excludes and discriminates against male students, Perry told the Fix. He went on to call the university's statement that the program is open to all students legal fig leaves. And a complaint has been filed against the university. Joining us to provide some insight on this case is Matt Lamb with the College Fix. Good morning, Matt. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on.
So, what do you think about this? I mean, is this going to go all the way? Is Boulder Black Blossoms and actually violating federal law?
It definitely is, because it clearly is only open to black women. So it violates both Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which forbids discrimination on the basis of race, as just affirmed actually by the Supreme Court and Justice Ketanji Jackson, of all people, writing the majority opinion, and Title IX, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. So the opening sentence of the description states, Boulder Black Blossoms, try saying that 10 times fast, aims to support the lived and individual experiences and achievements of black women. And everything else on the website, come learn how to get involved uplifting black women. It aims to create a supportive and empowering environment for black women. The Regent Wanda James, said on her LinkedIn, oh, this is so great. We had this big celebration a couple months ago. I am so glad we can support black female PhDs. So pretty obviously, and I think the Office of Civil Rights will see that this program is only open to black women, which is illegal.
We're talking with Matt Lamb, the associate editor of the College Fix. But Matt, couldn't I join this group and support black women? I mean, have they demonstrated that they've specifically rejected white males, for instance, or people of other races? I mean, maybe I want to help improve the lives of black women at the University of Colorado. So is it really so bad if people want to do that?
Well, it is pretty clear that at least only black women have been accepted. Now, of course, as you're saying, we don't know that a white male or a black male hasn't applied. You know, we don't know if they've applied, but the language turns people away. And in fact, the Department of Education has said before that language that clearly dissuades people from applying is in itself discriminatory, and that can be the basis for amending a program. There was this program at the University of Louisville, for example, that used language suggesting that white people should not apply. Now, a white person in theory could apply, excuse me, and see what happens, but if it dissuades them anyways, then it's probably illegal already.
We're talking with Matt Lamb. There's a complaint that's been filed, a federal civil rights complaint against CU Boulder and its program, the Boulder Black Blossoms. Now, you mentioned this program isn't that old. Part of the argument oftentimes that comes from the idea of providing benefits to people that are black or maybe other races is that they've been historically discriminated against. And so there needs to be an effort to kind of uplift them in light of historic discriminations. I'm thinking of why it fell right out of my head, where you got preferential acceptance to colleges. Affirmative action. Thank you, Bill. It's Friday. I'm already checking out. Affirmative action.
I don't want to admit publicly how many seconds it took me to think of that, too. Just saying. We both did it, my friend.
So that was the argument, like affirmative action. So we're going to do this for a little while to uplift people. But this seems like to be an organization that's relatively new, right?
Right, and so this program was created last year after the Supreme Court ruled in 2023 in Students for Fair Admissions against Harvard that affirmative action argument no longer holds. Sandra Day O'Connor, roughly 25 years ago, said what you're saying about we might need affirmative action for about another generation, and then about another generation later, 25 years later, they overturned affirmative action, the Supreme Court did. And Peter Kirsnow, who is a commissioner at the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, said there is no, I forget what he calls it, but there's no, for good cause reason. Well, look, we can discriminate in favor of black people or in favor of Hispanics based off the history in this country. Civil rights law is clear, and as I noted just actually last week in an opinion written by Justice Ketanji Jackson, she ruled that, the language of civil rights law is clear. You can't discriminate against majority groups such as white people or men, although frankly in higher education, men aren't even the majority group anymore, it's women. You can't discriminate against them just because of past history. You have to treat everyone equally, which is exactly what the Constitution and the 1964 Civil Rights Act says.
That's Matt Lamb. He's an associate editor with the College Fix. They've got a piece out, and I'll link to it on X. Racially segregated program at CU Boulder draws a federal civil rights complaint. Any word from the university?
So the university, I called a bunch of their attorneys. Of course, no one's in the office at 10 a.m. for some reason. And then finally I got a comment back from their top spokeswoman, Nicole Mix, just reiterating the language that's on their website, that it's open to all. After the article came out yesterday, I did email all of the regents, and you can just look up cu.edu, meet the regents, and you can find them. And interestingly enough, none of them responded. I thought for sure some of the, at least Republican regents, Ken Montera, Frank McNulty, Ray Scott, Mark Van Driel, just in case they're listening to the show, I thought they would take an interest in this clear issue of discrimination.
Some of them are listening. You can say hi to them. Some of them are listening. We know, so yeah.
Okay, great. And they also actually are probably violating their fiduciary duty to the university because they're opening themselves up to a lawsuit if they don't settle this. So I do hope they step up and they look into this and the university amends this. Oftentimes just the media coverage, so perhaps even just this radio interview, will lead schools to take action. Sometimes university attorneys, they're not even aware of a problem, and the spokesperson for a school will sort of wave us off. But then once the attorney hears of it, there will be changes. So if anyone knows someone in CU Boulder's leadership, please send them this interview, send them the article, and we'll see if there actually finally is a response.
That's Matt Lamb with the associate editor of the College Fix. Now, if Boulder Black Blossoms was privately funded,
that's where I was going.
Would this be anything different? Do we know if it's publicly funded?
It's operated through the university, so I assume it's publicly funded. But even if there was a private donor that was funding this program through CU Boulder, it would still be illegal.
Now, here's the thing. Matt, I got a question for you. I know if it's not funded through if it's not running through the institution, if for today, just for the sake of conversation, because I want to follow up on where Jeff was going, if today we created the Matt, Jeff, and Bill Black Blossom Society, notice I put you first, I'm just saying, but okay. If we created that privately outside of the structure of the university, can you address that too as to whether or not that could be legal and circumvent some of the problems CU is having as well? Your thoughts?
So if a private organization did it, I mean, for example, the NAACP has scholarship funds for black students. It's a gray area. It's probably more likely to be found legal, although the group Do No Harm has found this this law from the 1800s about private contracting, and they're suggesting those programs in itself are illegal. But I would say it would hold up to more. It would be more likely to be found legal if it was a completely separate entity that had no connection to higher education. But this happens a lot, where a private donor will give money to a university, and the deal is the university does the vetting, and they already have the financial aid staff, but they give money only for Hispanic students or only for Black students. For sure, once that money is somehow administered or the program is somehow run by a university, it definitely becomes illegal.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue here is once the university steps in and the university becomes the adjudicator and the functioner and the functionality of distributing the money, I think they run into problems as far as the law is concerned. I think they run into a lot of problems with it when they take ownership of it.
I mean, do you guys find it's interesting that and I'm just going back to my education and what I experienced going through government-run education here in Colorado, is like we were pressed so hard to get to like race blindness that we just like we wanted to move past it. We're going to judge somebody by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, and I mean that was what was promoted. And then it seems like all of a sudden in 2010-ish, we decided as a culture to like hyper-identify race all over again. That we're going to create programs for people's lived experiences as a Black person or a Hispanic person or as a Chinese person. Basically everything else other than white, because if you did that, you were a racist and somehow affiliated with the KKK. But we were driving as a society towards color blindness, and now we're in a place of hyper-race identity. Matt, what do you think happened?
That makes sense to me. That was around the time I was in high school and then starting college, and there was this hyper focus on ideas like white privilege. I think a lot of those things you mentioned, they actually just create more racial division. It's been studied before. There was a New York Times article a few months ago about DEI at University of Michigan that found these programs create more division on campus. They drive more disunity because they divide people. And so they have the Boulder Black Blossoms, which is for Black women in STEM. And then I assume there's probably other programs at this university for Latinos in STEM and Latinas in STEM and all these different niche groups. Why don't we just have a STEM club and different mentoring opportunities for people who want to go into science and technology and engineering and math? And so for the whole racial history, I can't say I can speak too much to that, but it definitely has been a focus of universities for at least the past 10, 15 years, like you're saying, this hyper-focus on intersectionality and white privilege, anti-racism, all wrapped under DEI.
That's Matt Lamb, Associate Editor of The College Fix. Matt, one could make the argument that we're just straining the gnat here. I'm looking at a picture, and they've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 Black women at the University of Colorado joined a group. I mean, if they're literally burning Jews up there, shouldn't we be focused on something bigger that's happening at Boulder than the Boulder Black Blossoms? Why is it important to spend effort, lawsuit time over this? Who cares? It's just a small 15-person group of Black women that want to work in STEM. Your response, sir?
Well, racial discrimination probably always starts small, and it's pretty clear this is racial discrimination. And I also think conservatives shouldn't cede the term civil rights to the left. This program clearly violates the civil rights of everyone who is not a Black female. It violates the civil rights of Hispanic women, of Black men, of white men, of Asian women, of Asian men. And we should not allow racial discrimination in any form to exist in our country. I would say the same thing even if there was just a small group that discriminated against Black people or Hispanics. We need to stomp things out when they begin before they spread. Fortunately, this has really spread throughout higher education, but it is important for us to stop these programs wherever we can and to send a clear message that it's not allowed. And thankfully, I think the Trump administration has been more aggressive, certainly, than the Biden administration in going after these programs.
That's Matt Lamb with College Fix joining Jeff and Bill live. You know, I want to kind of expand this, and I'm not sure if this is necessarily fair, Matt, but I really like how you think, and so I really want to kind of have your thoughts about this and Jeff's thoughts about this. Are we making a mistake? And this is a 10,000-foot kind of view. Are we making a mistake by self-segregating or segregating ourselves based on race rather than culture? And I'm not saying the segregation is a good idea, and what I'm leaning into is something said by actor Denzel Washington. He talks about the idea that Spielberg made Schindler's List and that Scorsese made Goodfellas. Now, Spielberg could have made Goodfellas, and Scorsese could have made Schindler's List, but they would have been different movies, and the emotional tones would have been different because of the culture, because Spielberg understood the culture and Scorsese understood the culture. Do you think, and this is just amorphous, not necessarily dealing with this, but do you think as a society we are making a mistake by being so focused on race and not instead acknowledging culture? Your thoughts?
I do think cultural differences matter more than race. So, for example, the white CU Boulder professor who dresses up like a butterfly to fight her climate anxiety, I have less in common with her probably than this older black man that goes to my church, and we've talked about this before. I'm Catholic, and I remember him saying how he was an executive at a well-known corporation, and he actually retired early because of the DEI things. You might be wondering, well, why wouldn't he support DEI? Well, DEI at this corporation, which I won't name, meant transgender pronouns, using whatever bathroom you wanted. And he, as a Catholic, he wasn't going to support that. He wasn't going to call a man a woman or a woman a man. And so him and I, we're closer culturally because of our shared religious beliefs and our outlook on the world. Whereas I have less in common with a white liberal than a black Catholic or a Hispanic evangelical or someone else where we have similar viewpoints. So I do think culture matters. I think that's how Trump won. It wasn't really about race. It was about the culture and political correctness and wokeness and what kind of America do you want? And so he tapped into Hispanics and blacks and obviously white people too, who did not like the way the culture was heading, particularly with transgender issues, but other topics as well.
And I think it's important to point out, though, that there is a long history of equating culture with race.
Ooh, good point.
Right?
Good point.
So you can't ignore that. That was part of the history. But if we as a society are going to get past that and actually have, I think, an intelligent conversation, because this is going to shock you all, there are superior cultures. Sorry, there just are, right? A Western civilization is better than an Afghani culture that doesn't educate girls and marries them off at 14 years old. So there are better cultures. And I think human society wants to advance. You need to recognize that there are certain things that cultures do that are better than others. It's not tied to race, but I think we need to recognize that we inherited a discussion or a history that did tie it to race, but for us to move forward, you got to untie it from race. So when you're creating black blossoms of Boulder or the Boulder black blossoms, you're not doing anything to actually advance the conversation. You're just continuing to tie things back to race over and over and over again. Definitely shouldn't be federally funded, and I appreciate the fact they're willing to challenge this. Matt, last word to you.
That's absolutely correct, and I do think we need to eliminate racial discrimination in higher education and treat people as equals.
After that, we go after the legacy admissions. Absolutely. That's crap, too. Matt,
hey, I want to ask, Matt, Bill brings this up all the time. You're the associate editor of the College Fix, so you're steeped in the college world. Those legacy admissions, any thoughts on that real quick?
How do we get rid of
them? I'm a little split on it. I will say I am favorable in some ways. One, from a funding perspective, I think if some CEO wants to give $50 million for a new lab at, let's say, Duke, and in exchange you have to let in his B-plus student, that's just good business sense for the school. And I'll also say culturally, for many let's just say private universities. It's a little different with public universities. Like my uncle went to Notre Dame, and if you know anyone who went to Notre Dame, well, you would know because they would tell you right away. But there's this history of going to the football games, and there's the Catholic element. And so I do think if it's a tie between two people, one who has a history of their family going to Notre Dame, for example, they went to the football games as a kid and went to the camps, and one who doesn't really have any connection, I do think the tie should go to the family member. Now, just a really dumb student, I don't think should be let in because their grandpa went to Notre Dame versus a really smart student. But I actually am not against legacy playing a role in admissions. And I think from a fundraising perspective, it's actually a smart decision.
Bill?
I can see the point. I can see the point where Matt is, and I think that we could come to an agreement on him. I hate the idea of legacy admissions, but given when the two are tied, and especially inside of a private institution, I can see giving the legacy a pass. But again, it would have to be an exact statistical tie for whatever that is for me. However, it's a really interesting argument, Matt, that letting in the student that might not be the top choice but still could get qualified to get in based on a financial gift to the school. Oh, that's a hard one for me, but I can see the argument for it. I can see the capitalist side of things, that it is in the best interest of the school. It does feel like the rich people are able to buy their kids a diploma, but I can see the point, my man. I can see the point. I appreciate it. It's a good point.
Matt, great conversation as always. Check out The College Fix at thecollegefix.com. Thecollegefix.com. We'll continue to check in on this case, and if we hear back from a regent who's probably listening, they often are, we'll let you know. But Matt, thank you again for your time today, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff and Bill. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll continue. But with you now, join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Is the Boulder Black Blossoms a violation of federal civil rights law? Or is it just a group of 15-year-old girls that want to get into STEM? Not 15-year-old girls. A group of 15-year-old, or a group of 15, a group of about 15 girls up at the University of Boulder who just want to get into STEM, want to get a stipend. Who really cares? Let the Boulder Black Blossoms blossom. You racist old white man? Give me a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let's talk L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. It's going to be 101 today. 101 in Colorado. It's going to be 100 tomorrow. Oh, my goodness. If your AC is not working, it's going to be rough, but call them right now. L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. When our AC went out last summer, they were quick to respond and help us out. Put in a whole new AC system in one day. No stress, personal service, start to finish. Followed up to make sure everything was perfect. Our home, totally comfortable. No matter what the weather, I can even control my thermostat on my phone. L&L Heating and Air Conditioning gave us peace of mind. Here's the deals they got going on right now. A free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation. No emergency charges, guys. A $0 trip fee. Price match value guarantee on equipment. Free estimates. Licensed and insured, and a 5-year labor warranty. Everything in our house works great. We had the AC off yesterday for a little bit. My wife walks in, it's like 84. She's been down at the barn, and she goes, "Oh, it's so hot in here. Turn on the AC." And within 30 minutes, we were back down to like 72. It was awesome.
Oh, that's amazing.
L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Fast, honest, reliable service. Here's their phone number, 720-851-1691, 720-851-1691, online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called him. That number again, 720-851-1691. We'll get to your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking the Boulder Black Blossoms program, which is meant to support the lived and individual experiences and achievements of black women to encourage them in the STEM program. It is now facing a federal civil rights complaint, basically making the argument, look, you can't be picking or choosing. You can't say to one race, we're going to create a program to help elevate you. It's all got to be equal. It's all got to be equal. Someone raising the question, well, how is this any different than a sorority? That's a good question. I don't know. Let's go to the phone lines. I don't know sororities. I went to a college without, it was a small Christian college. We didn't even have frats or sororities. I don't even know about them. Let's go to Nancy Littleton. Good morning, Nancy. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hi, guys. I listen to you every day on my way to work.
Oh, thank you.
Good to talk to you. Hey, my thoughts about legacy admission are, my husband went to an Ivy League school. We sent our son to the same school, although at this point I certainly wish I wouldn't have. But as far as legacy, I think everyone that has to go anywhere, whether it's CU Boulder or Ivy League school or a small Christian college, needs to meet their requirements. The time that I think a legacy should make a difference is all else being equal. One student has the same qualifications as the other, but the other has a legacy. Then the legacy can get in. That's the only time I think it should make a difference.
While I can agree with you on that idea in that system, Nancy, does it mean that you and I are both then arguing for a form of affirmative action? A form of giving preferential treatment to a cohort based on their makeup, based on what they bring to the table. The fact that now before it was because of this underserved population, but this is a population that already has ties to the school. So if we cross-apply that reasoning, are you and I then saying that we would be okay with a form of affirmative action? And yes, I'm trying to make the conversation difficult, but yeah, what do you think?
Of course you are.
Yeah, of course.
I think that it's more complex than that. I think if it were that simple, then I would have to say yes. But no, I think it's more complex than that. There's so many factors to think about in addition to that, affirmative action. I think if you have two equal people and you have to figure out which one to put in, then that's your determining factor. I don't think it's...
and I think there's a financial element here, too. I worked for a university for 8 years. Not every university is like Harvard with a huge endowment. A lot of them are just trying to get by, but when you get a family that becomes invested in the school, there's a lot of great dividends. You end up with buildings being named after them. You end up with multiple generations of kids coming to that school. They become, oftentimes they end up joining the board of trustees. So there's an element of benefit. So to me, the legacy issue is, I think, more sensitive to Bill than it is to me, but...
Oh, I'm super sensitive to it. Now, okay, now let's talk about this, Nancy and Jeff. If we're going to talk about the idea of, letting them in because of the financial benefit, well, if the financial benefit is so significant, should we now auction off places in Harvard? Take the top 30 spaces, take 30 spaces.
I think they already do.
I'm sure. That's kind of my idea, but
like when
should we
Trump
do it?
says if you pay $1 million, you can become a citizen?
Yeah, should we do that?
The gold green card?
Yeah. So should there be a Harvard, should there be a Harvard pass
why not?
card that if you donate $3 million to the university,
there's so many colleges
admission.
in this country, it doesn't bother me. But Nancy, your thoughts?
Yeah, what do you think?
No. I don't think so. I think that's different. I think that's buying your way in, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. And honestly, there's no financial gain for us. It cost me a crap ton to send that kid to that school. Yeah. And whether or not he got in because of that, I'll never know, right? But I do think, again, like I said, that being the only difference, that should be a determining factor. But yeah, there's so many, complex ideas that could spread out from that. And Bill, I have to thank you. You always make me think. I rarely agree with you completely.
Good.
But you often are the voice of reason. And I think, oh, yeah, Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So thank you for that, because it's good to stretch
Nancy,
my mind.
and
I'll let you guys talk
thank
to
you
each
so
other.
much,
I gotta
thank
go
you
to
so
work.
much, Nancy, for saying that you don't agree with me all the time, and even in a minor point of that. Because if a portion of the audience, a large portion, started agreeing with me, I would be really worried, because I am self-aware that I'm out of my own island. I get it that I come to the table with a whole bunch of different ideas, but I appreciate you playing along, Nancy. And again, if we were able to auction off those those places in the colleges, that could be the most American thing ever. Talk about capitalism.
Sure.
I'm teasing you.
It's pretty capitalist.
Yeah,
It is
teaching
pretty
Nancy.
capitalist.
Have a great weekend, Nancy. Thanks for
Lori
the phone call.
Loughlin wouldn't be in jail.
Yeah, I know. She wouldn't at all. That's the thing.
All right.
Oh, boy.
Discover incredible savings at the Mountain High Appliance Clearance Center in Denver. Love the Mountain High Appliance, folks. Their clearance center offers a huge selection of ranges, refrigerators, washers and dryers, and more. Listen to this, guys. You can save up to 60% on open box. 60% on an open box.
That's just someone that went, I don't like this. Take it back. Not set up, not used, nothing. It's just the box is open, or maybe it was opened in transport and they can't sell it that way.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to the car dealership and they have those loaner cars, and if they get to 1,000 miles, they have to sell them at a different price because now they're considered used. This one's not even used, but you get a discount
box,
on it. Yeah.
Some may have a scratch or dent, or maybe display models, or even overstocked appliances from Bosch, Thermador, KitchenAid, and many more. When you're looking for great deals on appliances, think Mountain High Appliance and their clearance center. Why not take the wife up this weekend, walk around, check out what's there. Best prices and selection here in Denver. Here's their address, 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. Larry, you're up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking a federal civil rights complaint against the Boulder Black Blossoms, which is a group of graduate students up at the University of Boulder get together to work on STEM. But is the formation of this group a violation of civil rights law? Some think so. Let's go to the phone lines. Larry, David. Good morning, Larry. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
How you doing, Jeff and Bill?
Doing good.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, and just bear with me just for a second. When the last caller said, as far as the legacy and meeting the requirements, I'm all for that. But the problem with society, and if you go back, it was automatic, assumed that you couldn't meet the requirements just by your race or just by or your sex. And what I'll do, I'll look at just what happened with the military with Pete Hegseth. And what happened, generals, women and men were let go because they were labeled DEI. Now, what I'm trying to do is imagine the conversation at their dinner tables and say, what happened? Why were you let go? And they have to say, well, they say what I've done and accomplished in life wasn't legit, and it was given to me. And you're generals, and you reached that goal. Now, Jeff, for me, I think you asked the ultimate question that what the world is going to have to, they don't have to, but just to figure out. Because with the sex change thing, you said, who are you? And then the part about that, who gets to say who I am and who I'm not? And then the way it goes about is that in any dominant society, and Jeff, you kind of alluded to that, who dominates a society gets to define you, your worthiness, your beauty, your value. One of the questions, why do women wear makeup? It's whoever dominates the society. And then who gets to make up all the laws and the beliefs and everything. So that's a crucial, important thing to me. It's like, who am I? And then who gets to say that and define that? And we screw that up all the time because our eyes, I keep coming back to that and say the eyes have it. And you need to make a decision around it.
Now, Larry, that's interesting, and I appreciate what you said about the assumption that for decades that certain classes of people couldn't achieve. They weren't going to. And I didn't get a chance to mention this earlier, and I want to right now, is that back in 1972, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito joined the Concerned Alumni of Princeton. What were they concerned over? The admission to the college of women and minorities. Yes. Because they couldn't compete. It was assumed they couldn't compete. And he joined the society that was pushing back on Princeton from allowing women and minorities into the educational sphere at his college. He was part of that group. And it was based on the assumption that they couldn't. And he's a Supreme Court justice. Yeah.
Yes. And so, with that piece, there's a came out, and I'm going to do this real quick. It's called Dr. Miles Monroe. And what he had, and he's a minister, and he has the purpose of a thing. And the reason why he wrote that as a spiritual religious thing is that who do we, if you have a Mercedes and you have a toaster, but if you take your Mercedes to a toaster manufacturer, you're going to get something wrong. So when we got men and women, we all get it wrong. So I'm just putting that piece out there, and I thank you guys for the conversation.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it, man. Have a great weekend.
Right, Larry, appreciate the call. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader. We are KNUS.